From Buffalo Toronto Public Media and WBFO, this is Buffalo What's Next. By now, most of us have seen the bright yellow billboards reading, "City Hall is failing us." Today, a conversation with two of the people behind those messages. From Our City Action Buffalo, Director Harper Bishop, and a member of their board of directors, Ariel Aberg-Riger. They say their prime motivation is to get citizens involved in the governance of their city, and to that end, to attend and speak out at today's City Hall public hearing on the mayor's budget proposal. And we'll have a conversation with Dr. Silvia Lloyd. She grew up in the Cold Spring and Fruit Belt neighborhoods and is the author of The Buffalo 10 Massacre, spoken word poetry for healing and understanding, a social justice curriculum that offers teachers lessons plans on the subjects of white supremacy and white terrorism. Ariel Aberg-Riger and Harper Bishop of Our City Action Buffalo, and author Dr. Silvia Lloyd, today on Buffalo What's Next. First, the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Top congressional leaders will meet President Biden at the White House today to talk about the debt ceiling. Republican leaders and President Biden disagree on the terms. NPR's Barbara Sprunt says allies of House Speaker Kevin McCarthy indicate there are 4 areas of potential compromise: spending caps on federal programs, work requirements for some people on public benefit programs, permitting reforms to speed up approval for new energy projects, and clawing back billions on unspent COVID aid.
Now, the source familiar with discussions said there's potential areas for common ground on the unspent COVID aid and permitting reform, but said the president and McCarthy are still very far apart on spending caps, those new work requirements for Medicaid and food assistance, along with revenue raisers like closing loopholes in the tax code.
NPR's Barbara Sprunt reporting. The head of the artificial intelligence tech firm OpenAI is testifying today on Capitol Hill for the first time. OpenAI is the company behind ChatGPT. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports company's CEO Sam Altman met a bipartisan group of House members last night behind closed doors.
The head of OpenAI is scheduled to testify before a Senate Judiciary subpanel in a hearing focused on AI regulation. Ahead of the hearing with Altman, the panel's top-ranking Republican Missouri Senator Josh Hawley said he's worried about privacy issues.
I do think that we've got to give Americans some basic digital privacy rights, and we've got to stop the tracking and the buying and selling of private information without users' consent. I mean, that's just critical, and now we have AI on top of that.
Lawmakers leaving a dinner with Altman last night said he told them AI is a powerful tool that can make society better, grow the economy, and improve lives, but warned against aggressive regulation. Claudia Grisales, NPR News.
Stocks opened lower this morning as the Commerce Department reported a smaller than expected jump in retail sales last month. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell about 170 points in early trading.
Retail sales rose just 0.4% last month. That's a smaller jump than forecasters had expected, although March sales figures were revised upwards. People spent more money in restaurants last month and less money at the grocery store. Sales at gas stations dropped by 0.8%, even as the price of gasoline was up. Stock in Home Depot opened lower after the company reported disappointing sales for the first quarter and cut its outlook for the rest of the year. Demand for home improvement supplies is easing after a 3-year boom. Manufacturing production rose by 1% last month, fueled in large part by automakers. Utility output was down, though, as warmer weather reduced demand for electric heating. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow is now down 166 points. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Wallace Foundation, working to develop and share practices that can improve learning and enrichment for young people and the vitality of the arts for everyone. Ideas and information at wallacefoundation.org.
We need to get together and let our voices be heard.
This is Buffalo What's Next. I'm Jay Moran.
I'm Bridget Jaipal Valenza.
And I'm Thomas O'Neill White.
After May 14th, how can we afford not to talk about race?
About education, about segregation, about humanity.
Since the dawn of this nation, racial violence has existed.
The way we have designed our society has a big hand in what occurred in that Tops Market.
The suburban area, everywhere, we must work and teach our children.
We need to make sure that we put more funding in our programs that help prevent gun violence and more money into art.
If we're going to have some real healing, we've got to have space to tell some uncomfortable truths.
On Buffalo What's Next, we have with us two members of Our City Action Buffalo, the director, Harper Bishop, and also on the board of directors, Ariel Aberg-Riger, also a member of the leadership team as well. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Lot to talk about here. One of which, one thing though I know is a big priority for you is tonight at City Hall. There's a budget hearing, right? This is a public budget hearing, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What, as basic as it sounds, we also know that not everybody necessarily goes to these things.
Right.
So some are unfamiliar. What is going on and why should residents go?
Right. Thanks, Jay, for the question. So we're going to back up.
Sure.
For the last couple of months, we've been working on a campaign called City Hall is Failing Us All.
We've seen the billboards.
Good. You've heard about them around town. You've seen them. And so we try to highlight what it is that residents need to know about in their city. And we know that the snow has melted and memories sometimes can be short. So we try to use the billboards as a way to do public education and to get ready for people to understand that there is a budget hearing and that these are the moments where decisions are being made. This is where we think about what our values as a community are about, what we're prioritizing, what needs to be in that budget, what doesn't need to be in that budget, right? And the absence of things being funded tell us what we prioritize and what we value in our community. So this is the opportunity for people, and it's the one and only opportunity, unfortunately, for people to come together and to voice their opinions about the real investment that is needed in our communities and the marginalized voices and people who are oftentimes not heard, poor and working class people who are working several jobs, who are unable to make it down. This is a time for us to stand in the gap for them, but also for people to come and be in person, and they can also testify virtually. So this is the opportunity where the mayor has released his proposed budget. It is the executive budget, but the Common Council has to amend it and then put it and enact it into law.
Traditionally, how aggressive are council members when it comes to amending a budget?
It's a really good question. So normally they aren't very aggressive.
Okay.
Normally they will take mostly what the executive proposes and they'll enact it and make just minor tweaks. This year, I think that we can expect them to be more aggressive because it is an election season,
right?
And there's an election cycle. The June 27th primary is right around the corner. So people are going to be watching what their Common Council members are doing in this moment. And we hope that they will listen to the people. Last year, we actually had some successes. It was on the heels of, unfortunately, the white supremacist massacre at Tops 514, which, of course, we just marked yesterday or the other day as well. And they did actually listen to the people in a myriad of ways, including not giving large increases in salaries for some of the higher-ups in the administration, as well as ShotSpotter was seen as a superfluous sort of expenditure and did not make it through.
Interesting that you did mention also salaries. A salary commission just came about. A lot about the process with this, right? Mm-hmm. The quick turnaround and of it and such. What about that? What do we see inside the salaries that are being offered here inside that we've seen in these proposed salaries from these commissions? Because how do they compare to other places?
So this is, again, a really important moment. We feel that this is similar to redistricting. I'm calling it redistricting 2.0.
Okay.
It's the same players. We have the same chairperson. Former council member Dave Franzek was the chairman also of this commission. They rush it through very quickly. There are reports that they have broken both state and local laws, similar to how they did in redistricting, to get this passed. And the 12.6% increase that is being proposed is I think to a lot of people very shocking, especially because raises were just given in 2019, and the report that came out was copied mostly from that 2019 report. And it was found that they were not looking at comparable cities. When you look at it, it is percentages much higher than what other comparable city lawmakers are making in the same seats. So this is a very generous gift that the council members have given to themselves. And much like redistricting, again, they're the people who will control whether or not they pass by June 15th. So it is both a part of the budget and less than 1%, but it is also apart from it in the process. And they have till June 15th, like I said, to make that decision.
If they've approved their raises, it would go into this budget.
Yeah, well, it's a separate process,
right.
But essentially, when you look at what is in the budget, it will be accounted for
right.
within it. So, the mayor has come out and said that he does not think it is the appropriate time for it. Councilmember Joe Golombek has also said that he didn't want to see it move forward in the first place. And now it's kind of stuck in the Common Council because I think they're recognizing and realizing that there are people who have eyes on this and that they did not follow the correct procedure to even be authorizing the raises that they're trying to give themselves. So, again, I see this very similar that now there are watchdogs like our City Action Buffalo and others who are calling out and holding accountable elected leaders to the processes that are written in the local and state laws. And that's, again, we don't think that this is a partisan, effort. And, this is really us just saying that there is a process to follow. If that process is followed, then we can look at what the raises, are. And then we get to the point where we see that the raises, again, and reported from resident researchers, is completely off according to what is comparable in other places.
And bringing clarity and visibility to that process is so important, right? I think when you think about budget hearings, I, as an average Buffalonian, think of like super dense spreadsheets that I don't understand. You can go online, you can download the PDF, and it is impenetrable. It is like hundreds of pages of dense line items that sometimes even professional policy analysts have trouble deciphering. So I think to ask your average Buffalonian to both go in, do that research, follow when it's being released, when it's not very clear to us when it's being released, try to parse that information if you're not necessarily some kind of accounting Excel genius, is too much to ask. And so I think a big thing that we're always thinking about, both with redistricting and with the budget now, is this is our city. These are our dollars. This is our process, and it should be incumbent upon our elected leaders to both explain it to us and try to convince us that this is the best way to spend our money. And so I think that with tonight and with everything else, the more people can come in and the more we can kind of demystify that process and make people feel like they are very much a part of it and very much invited to be a part of it. I think that that's what we're trying to do.
So just to follow up then on the process, so like you said, there's this document. It's available. We can all see it. When what you said, an Excel spreadsheet, I knew I wouldn't be able to read it. So I'm not sure really puts me in terms of the rest of the residents here. But to that then, so what are we? Is the focus going to be more on, hey, let's slow this down and try to go through this piece by piece, or is it let's get in the demands for the city that our neighbors, our constituents want? What are we looking for at the public hearing tonight?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the charter dictates that the budget has to be passed by May 22nd,
okay.
So it's very difficult.
So there's not going to be a lot of time for demystification.
However, yesterday we hosted a workshop to do that, the People's Workshop, in which we go and try to teach people in a popular education model, because there are also people who know as much as we know, if not more, and we look to them to help us to demystify and decode the budget and that very large PDF that Ariel just spoke about. At this point, we are going in there with a list of sort of requests, suggestions, amendments that can be made. We have done that work with residents. We've been talking to them. We wish that our municipal government was doing that work, because there are people and residents that are incredibly interested in these things. We'll talk in a moment about visual storytelling, and Ariel can tell you all about the work that we've done at our City Action Buffalo to make things more palatable and accessible. We're always thinking about accessibility. We're always thinking about how it will land with residents, what we're hearing from them, how we're taking their message and spreading it. That's really what we're a conduit in many ways. These aren't our ideas. These are really coming from the grassroots, and we would hope that council members and municipal government would be in the same business, that they would be thinking about how to make government more participatory so that people can have a say no matter their socioeconomic background.
So you went about finding a way to demystify this.
I mean, we're trying, right? Like we like hard problems at our City Action Buffalo. No, and I think that tying it back again to redistricting last summer is so important because what we saw there, where we did a series of visual stories, like simple handwritten visuals that we put on social media, that we put on places where people will encounter them in their everyday lives. Like we're not tucking this behind some hidden broken link on a city website. Like we want people to understand. And I think when you want people to understand, the way you communicate is very, very different. And so we found through our visual storytelling last summer with redistricting and through our billboards this spring that people are hungry to be a part of this process. People are hungry to change their city for the better. And people have so many ideas because they're doing this work. They know what it's like to not be able to afford rent. They know what it's like when their children are struggling or are testing with high levels of lead because their drinking water is poisoned. And I think when you have that level of lived experience with a city that is so deeply failing its residents in so many ways, you have ideas about how to fix it because you're forced to fix it yourself every single day when our elected leaders are not. And so I think that what I am constantly frustrated with as a visual storyteller is how the information that is put out is so closed. It is a closed door. I think that the way...
Closed, I mean, can you expand on that?
Closed, I think that when you have a process that people don't understand, when you have a document that people can't parse, and then you put the onus on the person and you say, well, we posted it. We did what we were supposed to do legally. It is online. You could have found it. I think that to me is telling me if people have not found it, if people cannot read it, it's your fault, not theirs. I think that if you want someone to understand something, you can put it out in a way that they will understand it. And we have found that again and again with the storytelling that we've done, with the workshops we've done, with meeting people as learners in whatever capacity they need, whether that is sitting in a group session and reviewing something together, whether that is putting something out more visually in shorter kind of chunks. When you do that, they respond so powerfully. It is so clear that the problem is not lack of interest on residents' part, but on how the information is being conveyed. And so we're always pushing and always seeking for new ways to do that communication.
I'm glad you said about the response, Ariel, because and I was thinking about this as you were speaking, Harper, as well. What kind of traction is our city action getting in the city right now? What are you seeing that's concrete?
Yeah, well, I think when the mayor was asked about the billboards and about us, he didn't say who.
He didn't say
he didn't say what.
Right.
He had an exact response, and we don't agree with his response, but we do believe that he knows who we are and that it is gaining major traction, and we're seeing front page articles being written about the work that we're doing, and folks are very interested. There is nowhere that I go on a given day where if I'm wearing my City Hall is failing us all, that people don't react and immediately ask where they can purchase the shirt. Or we had a person come up to us just over the weekend who said, I have said these very words to the mayor, to his face, because I believe that to be true. We had no connection to her. We don't know her, but we're building a relationship now because we were wearing a shirt and willing to say the truth, right? Which I think Jillian Hainsworth was just on the show, and right after 514, she said, we don't need Buffalo strong, we need Buffalo honest. And that's all we believe that we're doing is being honest, and we think that we're taking conversations that people are having in barbershops and in text threads and on porches with their neighbors, and we're putting them just in locations where everyone can see. And this is the truth. We're speaking the truth, and we're speaking everyday people's truths, and we're proud to do that.
And just to follow up, and I'm glad you did mention that the mayor did know who was putting the billboards up, but at the same time, he did ask our reporter, and I'll ask you the question as well, who is paying for these billboards? The simple question.
Yeah, we believe that everyday residents are paying for these billboards, and because they are. Most of our funding comes from grassroots individuals who believe in the mission behind our City Action Buffalo. And so those are grassroots funding. We have no major contributors. We do not get funded, unlike the
There's
mayor.
no nefarious.
We don't have Carl Palladino.
We
He was taken.
We don't have Carl
couldn't,
Palladino, Nick Sinatra. We do not have big developers and big moneyed Buffalo elite who are funding. So all of ours is through everyday people, everyday residents, and grassroots fundraising.
We're talking with Harper Bishop this morning and also Ariel Aberg-Riger from Our City Action Buffalo. All right, the issues for the public hearing tonight. There's obviously, you've been going through this, you've been thinking through it, you've demystified this budget proposal on your own. What can change in this budget? What could be amended? What are we looking in terms of priorities?
So last night we heard from people during a workshop that there are many different pressing priorities. We did just a small, brief survey of individuals who have seen the billboards, who have been talking with us. Their priorities land on things such as real investment on the east side. That ranked amongst the highest from individuals in terms of what they want to see.
And that's interesting, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, we're talking about your surveys are branching out all over the city.
Yeah,
it's not just
Oh, yeah.
on the east
Yeah,
side.
so
there's a general interest and belief.
A general belief and interest,
putting
yes.
in investment in the east side.
100%, yeah. And you're right. Our residents and the people that we work with are from every corner, and that is the most, held belief. Housing, of course, is a huge point for many, many people. The rent is too damn high. We remember the days, and they are long gone, where you could scrape together $300-400 and pay rent. That is no longer the case. I heard of market rate in the Fruit Belt, $1,500 over the weekend. That, to me, I could not come up with $1,500 to pay a monthly rent. That's about the same as my mortgage at this current moment. We saw from people public transit being an investment being there. Folks want to see the city schools being invested in. That number has not changed in almost a decade, if not more. And so they want to see real investment there. So people are talking about, lead abatement, of course, which we will see coming through American Rescue Plan dollars. There's $10 million proposed. Many of the issues on our billboards have been addressed through those dollars. Through American Rescue Plan dollars will also help low-income residents, but we also know that money will not be around for much longer, right? And so that revenue replacement that is now the city is benefiting from, that means that our city doesn't have a lot of money, and so they need to really think about how they're taking in money and where they're placing it, and it needs to be strategic in where that money is being placed. So these are some of the things. There's plenty more that people said. Climate. Emergency preparedness coming out of the blizzard. People are still thinking about that. They're also still wondering when those folks will be memorialized in any way. And so there's all those things that we've discussed. But I think that it's the deep investment that we want to double down on and say what it is that we're for, what it is that can make a better Buffalo, and that is we're here for a solution-oriented conversation.
And I don't want to monopolize too much time on some of my tangents here, but what about, though, as you look at the budget, the city's only has so much in terms of resources. Like you said, we've got American Rescue Plan funds for now. It's not going to be there. How much can this budget really be shifted to make investments that will make the kind of difference that everybody wants to see? I mean, do you feel like it's unlimited, or is there only going to be so much that the city can do?
I mean, of course, it's not unlimited, right? And I think that we know that. I think that residents don't think that there's like a secret pot of gold at City Hall that they're sitting on and not giving to us. I think that one thing that I'm always shocked by is that this is their job, right? Like, this is a huge part of their job, is to make the city run and make it run well for their residents. And I know that they released a survey this year, which a transparency advocate, I'm always super excited about, right? So they asked a lot of questions, and I filled it out dutifully as the resident that I am, engaged. And I think that I was laughing halfway through because the way that the questions were phrased is there was questions like, would you like nice roads or sidewalks? Would you like to have poisoned water sometimes? I mean, that was not a question, but I think but generally it was just, and the last question, I believe it was the last question in the survey was, do you have any idea where we might find some more money or what we should do with it? And I was like, my friends, I think that I, as a visual storyteller, would never call the Common Council and say, how do I use Photoshop and can you write a sentence for me? Like, I think that there are things that they should be coming to us and they can also tell us, this is where we're at, like, this is what we're doing. And I think that I do not know personally exactly how much money is at play or how much we can change, but I think that the most we can do is keep pushing on them to say, tell us what you're working with. And so much of what I find our relationship is in these types of campaigns is to force them to do that, right? Because I think when they go unchecked, they won't. And it is so easy for the budget to kind of just careen into whatever interests they feel like championing. And I don't think that's how it should be. So I think that they should tell us, how much money do we have? You don't have money? Okay, then what is left? Why are you spending it on these things? I think that those are questions that should be raised in a public forum.
And I think whereas Ariel was laughing halfway through, I found myself wanting to throw my computer,
crying.
quite honestly.
I mean,
for the
sad laugh.
For the very same reasons that, Ariel cited, is like, this is your job and you're asking us to now find revenue generation for the entire city. There's some things that should be asked of residents, and then there's other things that should not be expected of them. Those questions also in this survey were sort of, I felt, disrespectful and insulting and disingenuous, to be quite frank, because I thought to myself, if you had listened to residents all along the way, I've heard, I've been doing this work for a very long time, I've heard residents and community organizations give these answers many, many, many times over. The people are speaking. They're speaking very clearly. Are our elected officials listening is the question that's now at hand.
And then the question I have then, so this public hearing is tonight. What kind of turnout do you think you're going to get?
Jay, I'm expecting, because of this recording right now.
Come on down. Be there tonight.
We expect a good turnout. We expect that, we don't think that we'll see 150 people like we saw at redistricting, right? Because that took just a large amount of organizing in a moment that was, for all the reasons, just led to a moment where people were hyper engaged. But I do think that we're going to see and hear from a lot of folks who have taken the council budget survey, who have written to their council members. So even if you don't see them, physically there or virtually, they have spoken to, behind the scenes already. And then, I think we'll see 30, 50 people turn out to this, which again will have happened because resident leaders have sounded the alarm and made sure that folks were engaged. When you hear this kind of faux disappointment from elected officials that they were hurt or they were disappointed to see that only one person showed up to the public hearing, those are the moments where I think, well, if you told them it was happening. If you told them, or if you're so disappointed time and time again, you would use your social media, you would use your platform, you would use your newsletters, your e-newsletters to get the word out and to make sure that your constituents are there and they're engaged and they're participating. So, we're not here to place blame. We're trying to figure out how to do better and how to be engaged and how to get those ideas out. And we think that we'll have a good showing because we've been talking to people in the community all along the way and all through the process about this. And the billboards were really a kickoff to us trying to get attention onto the city budget. And for that, we're proud.
And the hearing is at what time?
5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Yep. Down in council chambers in City Hall, or there is a link that people are able to virtually, speak. They have to sign up to speak. There's a link on our Facebook page, on our Instagram, on Twitter, pretty much anywhere you go in this moment, you're going to see and run into on our platforms, the link to sign up to speak. You can also, I'm sure, do it right in the moment. That's often how it goes. So we imagine anyone that just shows up to City Hall can go ahead and sign up on the spot and have their opportunity to speak. You'll have 3 minutes, so you should know that. It's a very limited time.
It goes fast.
It goes very fast when you're trying to change a system. So 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
3 minutes to change the system.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Well, and then visually in there too, it's like when they put you up on the screen, they only show the timer. So like you want to see someone's face, but when you watch the live stream, it's just a giant clock like ticking, and then the person in the corner speaking.
All right, final question for both of you then. Yeah. Do you feel, with all the things that have happened in the city of Buffalo in the last year, do you feel that energy, that a lot of tragedy, too much tragedy, of course, is finding some legs and making a difference, or the type of energy that's needed to make a difference? What do you think?
I think people care. I think Buffalonians care so deeply about each other, about their kids, about all of our children. And I think that people are tired, and I think that people are hurt, and I think that people have lost a lot. But I also think that one thing we've seen time and time again is people standing up and helping one another. And I think that people want Buffalo to be better. People want Buffalo to be kinder. People want Buffalo to be a place that they can live in and thrive in. And I think that I remain hopeful that our elected officials will see us and realize that we're on the same team. Like, we are not going against them. Like, we are all here trying to build a better Buffalo. And I think that even with this campaign, when we're pointing out these intensely brutal truths about the city that we equally wish were not true and have been true for far too long, the driver of this campaign was towards a website called A Better Buffalo is Possible. And we do the work we do because we believe that so deeply. And we see in the people that we work with every day that they believe it too. And what we are asking yet again is for City Hall to believe that with us and to work with us to create the city we know can exist.
Let's drop the mic at that one now,
Yeah.
Harper?
I think she said it.
I think so. Well done for sure. Ariel Aberg-Riger on the board of directors for our City Action Buffalo. The director is Harper Bishop. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
We have to take a short break. We'll be right back with more Buffalo What's Next on WBFO.
This is Buffalo What's Next, where we have conversations with the community about moving forward. To have your voice heard, press the Talk to Us button on the WBFO app, and we'll work to get your questions and comments on the air. Join us on Twitter @WBFO or email us at news@wbfo.org. Together, we'll have the conversations that are needed. This is WBFO, your NPR station.
And welcome back to Buffalo What's Next. Jay Moran here, and our guest for the remainder of Buffalo What's Next this morning is Dr. Silvia Lloyd, author of The Buffalo 10 Massacre, spoken word poetry for healing and understanding. Dr. Lloyd, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here with us. Obviously, lots of serious and important issues to get in here with this conversation. But you describe this as a social justice curriculum.
Yes.
Take us through what that means.
What that means is that we want our children to focus on social justice. They were very present during the 2020 protest after the murder of George Floyd. They were out there protesting and marching, but we didn't see them do everything correctly. Like, there was a report of some young attorneys who threw Molotov cocktails, and we really want our children to move smart and to be effective and not have to risk their careers just searching for justice. So we know that they should look to their progenitors, people who have done this before in the 1960s, and even prior to that, starting this country with the abolitionist movement with Frederick Douglass. People have left a blueprint to follow where we can change the laws in this country. We can pursue justice in an effective way. And as Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men.
I like the way that sounds. That's inspired thinking, of course, but look who we're talking about, right?
Right.
So the way you have structured this book, you've got a series of spoken poems, is what you call them, and also then you lay out lesson plans for teachers. So it's a kind of a wide spreading type of approach to this topic. But It's interesting to hear how you go through your spoken poetry. You go right into, you make allusions to some of the greatest tragedies, outrages in the history of America, for sure. Not the least of which, of course, was right here in Buffalo. And I know you have a piece right there that you could read to us, please.
Mm-hmm. Say Their Names, the Buffalo 10. I saw a researcher out of Virginia named Zoe Spencer who focuses on women who have been brutalized by the police or wrongfully arrested or incarcerated. And she did something called Say Her Name.
Okay.
So I said, someone should do that for Buffalo. So I just threw this together quickly. Say Their Names. Ruth Whitfield, age 86. Pearl Young, age 77. Catherine Massey, age 72. Say Their Names. Hayward Patterson, age 67. Celestine Cheney, age 65. Geraldine Talley, age 62. Say Their Names. Aaron Salter, age 55. Andre McNeil, age 53. Margus Morrison, age 52. Say Her Name. Roberta Drury, age 32.
Thank you for reading that. And I could see as you were reading it, and I can appreciate it, the emotions inside you, right? You've written that, you've probably proofread it thousands of times, yet still saying it, it hits home.
Yes. We have to say their names. We have to remember them, or this will be swept under the rug. We'll forget all about it. I've actually spoken to people who said, oh, this just happened. They couldn't believe this just happened, not too long ago, because once it's reported on in the news, then they go to the next one and the next one. After Buffalo, there was Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, and then dozens of others after that. So we just want to make sure we remember Buffalo. This did happen, and as long as we remember them, they will live. They will live through us.
And I think I speak for a lot of people when we say that not only they live, but live to make major changes here in the city of Buffalo as well.
Yes.
You go through 5 different lesson plans. You start off with you show the example of the top shooters shooting, and of course, mentioning their names as well. But you get into white terrorism.
Yes.
And it's very powerful when you list some of these different occasions and outrages. Emmett Till, of course, from the 1950s. The .22 caliber killer. Talking about something that's been somewhat forgotten. Right here in the city of Buffalo, of course.
Right.
Who terrorized so many here in Buffalo. The Freedom Riders, who, of course, were murdered. The Birmingham bombings. And Cynthia Wiggins, another name that has been somewhat forgotten. Remind us about Cynthia Wiggins.
Well, the Wadden Galleria Mall, when it first opened, there was excitement. There was boom in
Back
the
when
economy.
people couldn't wait to get to malls, right?
Couldn't wait to get there. They go ahead and make this policy that buses are not allowed on their property. So, that's a red flag. Like, why? You don't want certain type of people there. Maybe they didn't want teenagers there. I don't know. But it really kept like poorer, lower class people from the city from going. They had to cross 8 lanes of heavy tractor-trailer traffic just to get to the mall once they get off the bus. And so that's what happened to the 17-year-old girl, Cynthia Wiggins. She was able to get employment at the mall, but getting there, posed a very serious challenge, which was dangerous. It put her in danger. And that's kind of what this policy, it kind of stemmed from, exclusion, redlining, and it caused a danger. So white supremacist violence it causes danger to all of us.
And it's something, not only just the number of people who have died at the hands of this, like the 10 that happened here in Buffalo, but it also reverberates throughout the community, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It causes anger. And people were outraged. And anger is not always visible. You don't see it. There wasn't, I'm not sure if there were protests over this, but it's highly written about. When I was doing research, I saw it referenced several times. By academics.
Yes.
Yeah, and the news media.
Our guest this morning, Dr. Silvia Lloyd, and we're talking about her book, The Buffalo 10 Massacre, Spoken Word Poetry for Healing and Understanding. So let's move through the curriculum a little bit, because it sounds like the one thing that you think is very important, of course, is to remember these tragedies, these outrages that have happened throughout history as well. But then you have a process to help try to move forward and use that, I guess, for lessons to be learned moving forward, but also a little bit of fuel to keep pushing forward, right?
Yes. Because I'm a Christian, so there's a scripture that comes to mind, Romans 13, I forget the verse, but it says, return injury for injury to no one. So it's very important to contextualize this, to define it, what it is and where it comes from. And that's why I start out with the white terrorism. Because all white people are not white supremacists, and all white supremacists are not white. There are some, we're all being indoctrinated daily with white supremacist ideology. It's an ideology that's deeply embedded into the curriculum in school, and we all learn it. Even Black people learn it, and we learn to respect all of the accomplishments of, the white man, even at the detriment of our own community. So we have to learn that, then we have to unlearn it, then we have to relearn. So we learn, unlearn, and relearn. And once we can do that, then we can have an open mind and we can try to heal. And I always say, hurt people, but healed people, healed people. So we have to focus on the healing first before we can fix this. So lesson plan 2, understand the role of resiliency. How can we create a plan for resiliency despite injustice? We have to go inward and we have to talk about kind of like therapy. So right now, the current model in education is resiliency is not taught directly and explicitly.
Okay.
And all people are not resilient. You may become resilient, you may not. You may have a downward spiral. So currently, if a classroom teacher observes and documents abnormal behavior, then they'll refer the child to a healthcare specialist in the building, which would be a school psychologist or a counselor or something to that effect, a social worker. And then the child may get instruction on resilience. However, in this book, what I propose in Lesson Plan 2 is that 100% of the student body learn about resilience.
Okay.
And I've actually tested this lesson plan on a group of 5th graders, and they're not even aware of what the word resilience is. They're not aware that this is a concept.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you go about then? Like you said, you don't mention it, which I guess maybe is a good thing, right? You don't want to have someone think, oh, if I follow these lessons, I'm going to have this characteristic.
Right.
So at the same time then, so how do you go about embedding that, teaching that?
We want to look at examples of maybe like rags to riches stories, something that children would understand. So, for example, I used Tyler Perry, the example of Tyler Perry, how he was homeless, and in his childhood, he experienced lots of abuse. Verbal abuse, psychological abuse, and sexual abuse. So the kids, I try to meet kids where they are, and they're familiar with Tyler Perry because he's popular because of pop culture. Yeah, and they know Medea, the Medea character. So they kind of hone in on that, and then I take them to the ACEs test, which is ACE is an acronym for Adverse Childhood Experiences.
Okay.
It's an actual test that anyone could take to see how much adversity we're experiencing in our childhood or we previously experienced in our childhood. So your score could range, low or high, and that can be an indicator of what services you may need or, how resilient, how much you need to focus on resilience.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that test. So how how is that judged? I mean, I can't imagine it's like an SAT
no,
test or anything like
it's
that.
very simple, very basic. Like it asks questions such as, were you ever verbally abused in your childhood?
Okay.
Did you not have enough food? Were you homeless? Did anyone ever touch you inappropriately? Things like, did you lose a parent to death? Death is an indicator of adversity. Things like that.
Okay.
So some people score high. They had all of that happen to them. Some people would say, oh, just one.
Right, just one.
Yeah.
And so then from there, how is that information then utilized?
It's kind of self-serving. I don't know if
Self-driven,
that's a word.
self-diagnosis?
Right, just to be aware.
Right.
Just awareness, basically, of what you're dealing with. Because sometimes we're not aware in the moment. And trauma has that effect on us. Trauma has no time or place. So if we experience something in our childhood, we may continue to feel it daily as if it's continuing to happen in that moment. So children experience that as well. They're experiencing trauma even though nothing's happening to them. They're safe in school. They have friends, but they're still, it's like a red alert, like 911 is going off in their minds.
And so then how is that then addressed? I mean, is it something that, like you said, this is the kid that we send to the counselor and try to help out along those lines? How can you proceed, I guess, is probably more important than how do you proceed?
Right. Well, currently, it looks like discipline in schools. Like, this child is doing something wrong. The classroom teacher, the onus is on the classroom teacher to start a behavior intervention plan or BIP. And he or she may collaborate with a crisis team in the schools, such as a school counselor, a psychologist, something like that. And an administrator, a school administrator. And then they determine what steps to take. So it may be tiered. There's different tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And also there's a new model that just came out called the multi-tiered support system, MTSS. So there are professionals working on this. There are systems in place. With any problem, you want to have a system in place to document and have a conversation, things like that. However, as I mentioned before, resiliency is not the focus of it as far as like in the curriculum. So teaching this proactively is kind of reactive currently.
Okay. And just curious, you're no longer in the Buffalo Public School District. You've since moved on to another district. But you were in the district. Mm-hmm. How many... Did you see, I'll just use the word a lot. Did you see a lot of kids who were maybe could score low and or high on that test? I mean, is that common?
Absolutely. That's very common, yes. I worked in Title I schools, and Title I schools have the highest concentration of poverty, and the indicator of that is if they're getting a free lunch. So if it's like 99% of the kids are getting free lunch, then that's an indicator of deep poverty. The school I worked at closed, but it was on Broadway. It was called School 44, Lincoln Academy, School 44. And it was a Title I school, and there was deep poverty. Many of the kids did not have home telephones, so it was hard to reach the parents. They would come to school with no supplies, no pencil, things like that. So, reaching them where they are, is very important to have supports in place, because it could look like they're just acting out. There needs to be discipline in place.
I was going to ask that to follow up then, just how would you see this manifest itself among the kids? I mean, you would see maybe kids acting out, but they were the kids without the phones, the kids without the supplies.
Mm-hmm. There was violence in the school, like fighting amongst themselves. A chair was thrown one time. I was standing out in the hallway as the classes were passing, and a student went into the computer lab across from the library and got a chair and threw it at another girl, and about 3 or 4 other girls started jumping her after the chair was thrown on her. I never witnessed anything like that before in my life. So yeah, there was violence. It was hard to get the children to like really focus on academics. And I've seen it play out where it looks like high suspension. The kids are not in school, but you want them to be in school.
Right.
They need to be there. There's a disconnect between the community and the school, because to the parents, it looks like you're picking on my child. It's hard to come to a solution when things are like that.
Dr. Silvia Lloyd is with us this morning on Buffalo What's Next, author of the book, The Buffalo 10 Massacre, spoken word poetry for healing and understanding. Inside there, lesson plans for teachers to try to work their way through some of these complex issues. We've got about 10 minutes to go, so we want to maybe touch upon a couple of the other parts of the lessons moving forward that we can maybe get an understanding of how this process could work and what the ultimate goal is.
Okay, well, the ultimate goal is to organize. We need to organize the community, the Black community, and children need to learn how to band together and how to form a block, how to change laws in their community that do not benefit them. So they want to do a little research. So I'm a librarian, so of course research is a part of these lessons. Right. We show them the deeper web, how to get to scholarly articles, but they also answer questions such as how is the Black community different from other communities when dealing with issues of inequity in society. And that's very important because we know sometimes there's riots. Sometimes there's looting. So we want to look at that and say, is this the best way to go? Is this going to solve problems? And we also look at the Black Lives Matter protest.
Okay.
So that's the third lesson plan entitled Read the World. We can research the Black Lives Matter protest, and it asks questions like, what did the protesters risk when they went out there? And did it solve any problems? What problems were solved? What do you think their values and beliefs were? And how can we change America? And then it goes into going into their community, which is a big piece of culturally responsive pedagogy. We want students to look at their communities because they need to see their community, their family, and themselves in the curriculum. So we're going to start there. So researchers who have written about this are Gloria Latson-Billings and Dr. Geneva Gay, who really laid out, how to go about culturally responsive teaching and learning so that the student can value themselves. For example, if you're going to teach them about the Constitution, you don't just show them the Constitution because they're not in there. Right. So you want to send them out into their community and say, is there an organization in your community that uses bylaws? If so, why and how do you think that helps keep order in the organization? So they may go to their church, they may go to the CAO, in their community and talk to someone. Are there any bylaws here, and what are bylaws? And then we kind of gradually go into laws and the Constitution and why we need them, why they're important to us. In the very last lesson in my book, the children are directed or encouraged to go to a community meeting in their community, such as a Common Council meeting, a school board meeting, any type of meeting in the community where they can see leaders in the community. They're to look for who has the power in the community, who lacks power, who's speaking, who's representing those who have the power. They're also learning skills, like interviewing skills, the difference between open-ended questions, clarifying questions, identifying who the oppressor is and who's being oppressed. And they're learning research skills and also using technology and different sources to locate scholarly information, such as databases. There's a database called Opposing Viewpoints database, which is great for children. So as a librarian, we use that in the school library. The children, we want them to also take that information and write about it, and also go to social media because social media causes a hyper awareness of issues, and which is kind of how we got here today. Social media can help change public opinion.
Certainly.
When people are aware of these issues. So we want them to go to Twitter and use a hashtag and get people interested. Like, how will you inform your community and the greater community? Because we know in 2020, that was a big part of it. The greater community was protesting the murder of George Floyd.
Right. The hashtag BLM, or Black Lives Matter, right?
Yes. Which is a big part of the Buffalo shooting. Black Lives Matter and the Buffalo shooting intersect.
And I guess, in what way would you say that they're intersecting?
They intersect in the sense that the Buffalo shooting was racially motivated, and the killer researched the highest concentration of Black lives to kill.
Right. And
yeah. Whereas other mass shootings are not always racially motivated.
Right.
Because some are Latinx on Latinx, or white on white, or some focus on the LGBTQ community.
We're coming down to our final couple of minutes here with Dr. Silvia Lloyd. Dr. Lloyd, I can't let you go here without just talking a little bit about your background growing up in Cold Spring and also in the Fruit Belt.
It was great. It was a community. It was a real community. I've seen how it deteriorated into a hood, a neighborhood.
Do you think that's more of reputation, though, than or?
It could have been back then, when all of the different classes, like poor, lower class, some criminals, and then upper class doctors and lawyers lived in the same community. But now, after 1970, I've seen it deteriorate into a lack of services. So when I was growing up, there was always like Little League, Girl Scouts, there was the CAO. There were many organizations and services, and that's what a community is, where you get your support, social support, financial support, spiritual support, but I see a lack of that today, and it's more like high crimes, abandoned homes, underfunded schools, things like that.
And of course, you've been in town throughout the weekend and here as well, talking with us this morning, which we're thankful for your time in that regard.
Thank you.
But what did you think about the events of the weekend commemorating the 1-year anniversary? Was there any kind of sense in there of that there's a commitment inside this community that these 10 people are going not just be remembered, but their deaths are going to be used for positive change?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said for positive change, because there's mixed emotions. To have to commemorate white supremacist violence is sick within itself, that we have to do this.
Right, of course, yes.
But at the same time, we want to turn this tragedy into an opportunity to grow and to learn from. It was bittersweet. It's good to see everyone out and people having their own issues, that they want to discuss. I think it's this, I think it's that. We can get to the root cause of this. Safety is very important to a lot of people now, heightened safety in public, like at the supermarket, schools, everywhere. People need to feel safe. But yeah, there was some ambivalence.
Yeah. And you had discussions with friends and family members about it as well?
I'm working on the documentary, which is going to be coming out maybe like in a year. I'm still working on it. But I spoke to a lot of people. I spoke to the president of Tops Supermarket, which he's focused on the healing aspect, providing counseling for the workers there, and heightened security, different security measures to keep the store safe. I spoke to Antoine Thompson, who was a former senator, New York State senator, who was very instrumental in bringing Tops there. He's very happy that it opened back up.
Right.
That was a big piece. Like, let's keep this open. There's so many services there for that community. But I also spoke to Oh gosh, a lot of people.
Right.
So many people. People who were in the store. Zaire, I spoke with.
Zaire Goodman.
Yes, who still seems very much traumatized, just from his body language. You could tell so much healing needs to take place. And also another person who was on his way to the store. He was taking his mom to the store, Mr. Robinson, and his mother was saying, "No, just take me to Tops on Jefferson. I'm not going to take you out of your way. She's elderly." And he said, "No, Mom, I'm going to take you out, to Cheektowaga so you can do all your shopping, take your time." So as soon as he got to the store, she went inside. He's sitting in the parking lot in his car waiting for her, and he gets the call. Yeah.
We're looking forward to hearing more of your stories.
Thank you.
Dr. Silvia Lloyd, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for
this
having
morning
me,
on
and congratulations on your show, your award-winning show.
It's because of you and other members of the community why this show is on. Dr. Silvia Lloyd is the author of the Buffalo 10 Massacre, spoken word poetry for healing and understanding. Also earlier, we talked with members of our City Action Buffalo, encouraging you to go to the public hearing tonight at 5 o'clock at City Hall on the budget. This is WBFO and WBFO HD1 Buffalo, WOLN Olean, and WUBJ Jamestown, your NPR station.